Okay, let me share. Oh, that's not what I want to do. Okay, awesome. Here we are, last session of the series, the Freedom Wellness series. So today is kind of all about meal planning, grocery shopping, kind of applying some of the things that we've learned throughout the last 5 sessions into real life, right? Practical application. So we will obviously go through meal planning. We'll talk about grocery shopping a little bit, and I have some fun handouts at the end. However, today, since it is our last time, I really want to leave some time, one, to specifically talk about meal planning for you all, especially since we have a smaller group today. It'll be kind of intimate where we can kind of talk through some of your situations if you are interested in that. So I really want to hear from you and have that good discussion about meal planning. What are some challenges that you're having? What are some things that work for you guys? So we can kind of give that one-on-one feedback to you all. Also, I do want to just leave time at the end to talk about you guys in terms of the whole set or the whole series, right? So anything that you feel like we didn't talk about that you would like to talk about, or just, generally goals that you want to keep working on, encourage each other, or, whatever you guys feel that you need, I want to make sure we leave some time for that at the end. So we'll do that. And then I guess I'll leave all other announcements toward the end. So yeah. Okay. So meal planning. This is probably the number one, like, most asked or like topic that people are interested in, because how do we do it, right? How do we learn stuff about information, but how do we put it on the table for ourselves and for our families, right? So this, along with the last 5 sessions, we still want it to be simple. We want it to be tasty, and we want it to be healthy, right? Because again, all of those can be together, right? If it's simple, it can also be tasty, it can also be healthy, and vice versa for all of them. So again, we've seen, I know you guys are probably sick of seeing this picture, but the Power Plate, right? So this is also a tool, not only for creating your plate, but creating your plan for the week, right? So how do we make sure that we have each box checked when it comes to the Power Plate and for those 3 meals a day? So it is a really good tool on planning your meals for the week, of course, and just making sure you have a variety of things in each food group, right? So the biggest takeaway is we want to focus on serving mostly whole foods, and aim to provide a variety of each food group, right? So make sure we have those things. Variety is good for several reasons. We've probably talked about it a little bit. Variety, one, is just proven to be good for your physical health, especially your gut. So we all have bacteria in our gut, and there's millions and millions and bajillions of different bacteria that are responsible for breaking down different foods. And so the more variety we have, the more bacteria we have, which sounds gross, but it's a good thing. And what in turn, it helps with digestion, because you have, the bacteria is better at breaking down multiple foods, if that makes sense. So variety is good for our physical health, but also we've talked a lot about that, like, behavioral component and emotional attachment to food too, right? And variety is another way we increase satisfaction. We make peace with all foods. We keep the fun in food to find that food freedom. So variety is really important just in general. So we can make sure when we're making our list that we have a variety of each food group week to week. So back to the Power Plate a little bit. This is kind of a realistic picture of the Power Plate. But just in general, we want to make sure that we have multiple protein sources. We want to have those high fiber carbohydrates, and we'll go into this a little bit more in depth later. And then we want to include some non-starchy vegetables and fruits and healthy fats. And a lot of these, again, we'll talk about staples in a little bit. And a lot of these can be staples, right? Like a lot of the carbohydrate or the high fiber carbohydrates can be staples that you have on hand all the time. And same thing with the fats. So if you don't mind sharing, what kind of meal planner do you think that you are? How would you describe your meal planning technique? What do you guys think? How would you describe yourself? Is it organized? Is it chaotic? Is it inconsistent? What do you guys? Winging it. Okay. Yeah. And sometimes that, that happens, right? I mean, and I think even we'll talk about today how we can still sometimes wing it, but have a plan. We want to have a plan. We don't want our plan to be rules. We want it to be a guideline, right? Chaotic. Yeah. I've felt chaotic before. Definitely. I have another chaotic and sometimes non-existent. Yeah, exactly. Like sometimes it's just like we go into the week without a plan. And, sometimes I get the challenge of, gosh, I just don't have time to make a plan. Right. And I understand that, but it's more about reprioritizing time, because if we don't invest time to plan in the beginning of the week, oftentimes we spend more time around food and planning and all the things later on in the week. So it's kind of about shifting things a little bit and just takes practice. I got another non-existent. Oh, this is a good one. So someone feels like organized with I can't remember if you guys can see the chats. But organized, but you don't always eat make what you eat. Wait, so you don't always make what you plan for. I'm thinking I'm getting it right. But yeah, like that's a big one. I get that one a lot too. Oh, you buy. Yes. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, good ones. So 2 types of planners that I want to point out that are helpful. So first one we have is the weekly planner. So this one is the most recommended. I'll put this down here. I have another chat. Ooh, that's a good one. So cooking for a family, making multiple meals, because some people like some things and some people don't. I'll save that for the end. I'm going to write that because I think that's a kind of a discussion of its own. And we can kind of talk about that at the end of the good one. Okay, so weekly planner, most recommended for several reasons, right? For the obvious reason of it's just easier to forecast for the 1 week coming up. We have no idea what's going to be thrown at us in the next 2 or 3. We can kind of tell, right? And we'll talk about in the next planner how we can kind of forecast past that, but we want to weekly plan for the most part. Now, some of you might have memberships to Costco or memberships to Sam's Club, and those are really good for bulk shopping. And you might go to one of those places, 1 to 2 times a month to stock up on some of those like non-perishable items or snacks or something like that. And then on a weekly basis, at least buying those perishable or fresh items. So the first thing you want to do is look at what's planned for the week. And I want to really put an emphasis on look at what's planned for the week, but also be realistic about what you have going on, how much time you have, the energy that you'll have for the week. Like if you have a super chaotic, busy week, be realistic about what you can prepare and what you can't. So, if you have a game or maybe your kiddo has a game and you're not going to be home till 8 p.m., how can we plan for that in a way that's still setting you up for success without necessarily going through the drive-through? So maybe it's a crock pot meal. Maybe it's just a quick frozen pizza with, frozen broccoli, right? Or Or maybe it is your night of the week to go through, pick something up for your family, right? At a restaurant somewhere. But just be realistic. Like, what can you do to where you're not feeling as chaotic on that night? So look at what you have planned and come up with meals that have a variety of different things. So typically what I do, and we'll talk about this more, but typically what I do is I look at what's planned and then I come up with how many dinners do I need to make, right? And not only like make, but just prepare. So that includes if I'm doing something quick and easy, or if I have more time, maybe I'll make something that takes a little bit more time. And then for breakfast and lunch, I'll usually have 1 to 2 things that I'll rotate between. For lunch, it depends what you're making for the week, but sometimes I'll take leftovers, but some meals don't always have a ton of leftovers. Like, for example, when I make fish, for some reason, I don't always have a ton of leftovers with a fish meal. And so I'll buy something as a backup that week, so I'll usually have 1 to 2 things. So maybe that's sandwich stuff. Maybe that's Amy's frozen meals. Maybe that's boxed mac and cheese. Maybe it's just like, having refried black beans and cheese and making bean and cheese tacos for lunch. So have some sort of like 1 to 2 things that you can kind of rotate through, or doing leftovers, if that makes sense for lunch. What I'm trying to say is don't have like a recipe for lunch to follow every day. That's, you're going to have too many leftovers and ultimately have food waste. And then same thing for breakfast. And breakfast is one that usually you can make off of your staples. So I always have eggs. And again, with breakfast, I like to have things that I can possibly cook if I have more time, or backup things that are quick. So protein bars, protein shakes. We've talked about the Kodiak pancakes and waffles, or the Eggo, even the Eggos with peanut butter on top, or cereal is usually a quick one. So have something quick and easy for those chaotic breakfasts. Or like we talked about, I think we talked about overnight oats even. That might have been the in-person group. I can't remember, but overnight oats is a really good one because it's something that you can grab and go. So be honest with yourself about, what you can make happen throughout the week. And then plan 1 day to shop each week. So it's a good thing if it's consistent as possible. So if it is, the same day, roughly the same time every week, however, that is in a perfect world, right? And sometimes it doesn't go that way. But the biggest thing is we want to, like I said earlier, we want to invest some time to save time throughout the week. Right. So we don't have to be like, I think I've said this to you guys before, but my family growing up was like calling each other every night. What are we having for dinner? Going to the grocery store, getting it each night. Right. And that is stressful every night. Right. And so we didn't go in with a huge plan. We had some things, right? But we didn't go in with a huge dinner plan, and ultimately it created a lot of time throughout the week figuring out what we were going to do. So it is an investment in the beginning of the week, or at the end, if you do it on Saturday, whatever day works best. But I encourage you to think of 1 day that works to sit down and make some sort of plan. Any questions or thoughts about the weekly planner? Or are any of you a weekly planner and maybe you have some tips like for others that really has helped you, or challenges, anything like that? Okay. So the next one is the freezer planner. So I know someone mentioned, and I'm including it on our resource sheet that I'm going to share with you at the end of the class, but I think it was called the Freezer Family or the Family Freezer, one of them. It's a really good resource for like freezer meals. Or, you can also do this yourself, right? Like if you're making a meal, maybe double it or triple it and freeze some of it so you can use it later. Or you can make 3 or 4 meals for the week that you can just pop in, right? So you can freeze things like such as lasagna, casseroles, shepherd's pie, even soup you can do. And these are for those busier nights, busier schedules. I even have some patients that'll do it like they're like a seasonal freezer planner kind of, right? Like if they have a kiddo in football and football season's just crazy, then maybe they'll have some freezer meals for that season. Or if they know that their next month is going to be crazy, they'll plan for that month. One of my coworkers just had a baby, and she froze some meals for when she got home, because that's another time where she's just not gonna cook, right? She's trying to get used to having a newborn. So you can kind of forecast and see what should I, what could I prepare? What could I have? A lot of the meal delivery services now, like Home Chef, I think Hello Chef or Hello Fresh is what it's called. Hello Fresh does it too, but they have the oven ready meals now. So it used to be, and they still have both options, but it used to be where you just had to, you got the ingredients, but you still had to cook it and prepare it and all the things. But now they actually will give you oven ready meals. So like enchiladas again, or lasagna or something like that. And it's really convenient and nice. And then still the sides, you can, be prepared fresh. If you wanted to do like a salad or something, and that would be kind of your weekly planner, weekly planner routine. And then when you notice that the freezer starts to empty, you can make more. So again, a really popular strategy for busy schedules, just to keep you on track. Another, I think I might have mentioned this, but another just really awesome tool is the good old crock pot for busy nights and busy schedules. Like I love a dump recipe where you can just like pour a bunch of canned things into a crock pot and it's ready at the end of the day. And I think the Instant Pot, I haven't played around with my Instant Pot as much as I would like to, but I think people really love this too, because again, what's the hardest thing for me is to remember to thaw my proteins. And now with the Instant Pot, you can cook from frozen really quick. So that's a plus there. Does anyone have a lot of experience with the Instant Pot? Yeah, I don't. I need to play around with my Instant Pot a little bit more, but there's a lot of good quick recipes that you can make. You just have to be, the one thing that I have made, one of the things is I think I made Brussels sprouts in there one time. You have to be careful because you cook veggies in there for like 2 minutes and they're mushy. So that's the only thing. Oh, air fryer. I love the air fryer. Someone mentioned air fryer. Air fryer has been such a cool tool. I make salmon in there all the time and it comes out with like a flaky crust on top. Oh, it's so good. I love the air fryer. Okay, so some other meal planning tips and tricks that we'll go through together. So first thing is explore what you already have. So this often will save time and money. And we'll do an example of this at the end, kind of a practice, but kind of look in your pantry, your fridge, your freezer. What do you already have that could potentially be a meal? Because there's a lot of things, even in my pantry right now. I mean, there's a lot of canned stuff that I could probably use to make a meal, but I'm, not even thinking about it when I'm making my grocery list for this week, right? So look at what you have already. The examples that I put on here, you have canned beans. There's a lot of different meals that can be made from that as the protein. Rice, because that's usually a staple. So if you have rice and frozen chicken breast, you can essentially make a stir fry or a chicken fried rice. So explore what you already have to make meals. Try 1 to 2 new recipes each week. So again, this doesn't have to be complicated recipes, but just something fun and something different. I made, I don't know where I saw the recipe, somewhere, probably on social media, but you guys know the Boursin cheese. It's like a soft cheese that you can eat on crackers. I made like an orzo recipe. It was really easy the other night, and I put that in there as the sauce, and it was so good. And I love those little, tricks that you can find. Anyway, so try 1 or 2 new things. So again, going back to variety, this is good for physical health, but also it keeps things fun, right? And it's a good way to include your family, because going back to the family meals of like, my family doesn't always agree on what we should cook. Well, if they have a say in like, okay, let's make, fish tacos. That's what, say your son is like, that's my favorite meal. Well, if he knows that fish tacos is coming on Thursday, then, you on Wednesday, if it's spaghetti and he doesn't love spaghetti, well, you can say, well, that's sister's favorite meal. Tomorrow you get your favorite meal, right? So it's a good way to include everyone. And it kind of helps you out, if you're the planner, right? Have people do the research for you. Plan to use leftovers. So again, this will save time and money. So a few ways that you can use leftovers. So like we talked about earlier, taking it as lunch the next day, or making one of the busy or more chaotic nights leftover night. Or it could be, hey, I just don't want to cook tonight. We're going to eat leftovers, right? So that's okay. And it's a good way to prevent that food waste. So plan to use leftovers, even if that means making a little bit more of that one meal that you made, right? Because again, it's, you're kind of making the two, using one meal or one time to have two things there. We talked about this a little bit in one of our previous classes, but keeping that ongoing shopping list either on your phone or in your fridge, this cuts down on a lot of time. You'd be surprised because by the end of the week, you might have 6 or 7 things on there already that you need to get. So you're already into your planning for that week or for that grocery list. So keep a running list. I personally like to keep it on my fridge. Just because when I'm in the kitchen, I notice I've used something, I just write it down. But I think the phone is a really good way, especially with multiple people in your house, because they can add things in. So either one, but just keep a list there because it's helpful. And then buying a combination of backup meals and snacks. So be realistic again. You may not have the time, you may not have the energy, and that is okay. Again, in my opinion, my professional opinion, having those convenience meals helps keep this a lifelong thing, right? It makes this sustainable because you don't feel like you have to cook and clean every single night for the rest of your life. So have those convenient things, have those quick things together. And, for those of you that do have kids that are able to cook, have those easy things for your kids to prepare, right? I mean, this is like, I talk to my parents or my parent patients a lot, my patients that are parents, a lot about this because it is mutually beneficial. It helps you, but it also helps the kiddos, right? It helps them feel more confident in the kitchen and familiarize themselves with cooking and for themselves and for the family. So don't be afraid to utilize that as a tip. And then of course, utilize the curbside pickup and delivery. Yes, sometimes you don't get exactly what you want or you don't get to pick it out, but it is such a good resource for staying on track with your planning and even the budgeting part. So a few more tips, just going off of like all things grocery shopping and meal planning. Chop your vegetables ahead of time. So one, this is easy, it'll be ready to throw into a meal, but also it's good for snacking. I think if it's chopped and in the fridge, we're a lot more likely to eat it or to include it, right? And don't be afraid to buy the pre-chopped veggies or the pre-chopped fruit. Yes, they're more expensive, right? But sometimes it helps depending on what phase of life we're in, and then always carry some staple ingredients. I have a handout at the end. It's probably my favorite handout that we have. It's 10 no recipe entrees. So it's 10 recipes using staple ingredients so that you can just kind of throw together. So we'll talk about that then, but just have some staples on hand, right? Whatever that might be for you and your family. But, for me, I'll kind of go through mine quickly, but in the pantry, I always have rice and pasta, right? Because those are two pretty quick bases to meals already, right? Rice and pasta. And then I always have oats, usually. I go through a phase of oats, but I always have them because they stay for a long time. What else in the pantry? Oh, canned beans and canned tomatoes and canned chickpeas. Those are usually staple because again, they can be thrown into a meal really quick. Or canned tuna. Some people, I think people have really strong opinions on canned tuna, but I'm one of the ones that likes canned tuna. And then in the fridge, I always have eggs and milk. I'll usually keep like tortillas, bread, bagels on hand, some kind of grain that I can use for breakfast or for lunch, cheese. So, oh, and Greek yogurt I usually have on hand, whether I'm making smoothies, whether I'm making sauces. I make a ranch dip all the time with plain Greek yogurt for veggies or for frozen chicken tenders, whatever I'm doing that week. So you can kind of get into your routine of like what you make a lot and keep that on hand, right? So staples are really a good way to kind of stay with it. Again, I think I have this like 17 times on this PowerPoint, but make sure to include foods from each group. Variety is important. Theme nights are fun. I have something at the end for a little bit more about theme nights. I think this helps with planning, especially for a family. I think it makes it kind of fun. So double or triple a meal to freeze some for later. This says you can freeze almost anything except for canned food, eggs and shells, mayonnaise, fried food, uncooked potatoes, cream sauce, and lettuce. But anything else you can at least try to. So I'll, if I think someone else mentioned this too in a previous class, but if you have leftover veggies and you want to freeze them, sometimes I'll just go ahead and freeze them. But I think someone mentioned that they'll blanch them, which is the right way you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to blanch them and then freeze them. I'll just sometimes freeze them, like bell peppers, jalapenos. I'll cut them up and I'll freeze them and I'll put them in eggs or soup or stir fry. Obviously bananas. I have about 25 frozen bananas in my freezer right now, probably. I'm going to get around to making banana bread or something eventually, but who knows? But you can freeze a lot of different things. Soup is a really good one, actually, that you can freeze. So, and easy to thaw for a later meal. And then keep coupons on hand. I think we had someone that mentioned coupons before in our budgeting class. But yeah, keep them on hand. I mean, usually you always get a printed one. I know for me personally, I always lose the printed ones. But if you're using curbside pickup for especially Kroger, I have the most experience with Kroger, but I'm sure all of them do it. At the top, usually they'll have coupons there. So look through and see what coupons you can use, and you'll be surprised. Sometimes it's things that you use all the time. Like today, I just did my grocery shopping online, and there was a coupon for ground turkey, and I would have never known unless I clicked through. So definitely take advantage of some of those things to save some money. And it's kind of how I planned. I was like, oh, ground turkey's on sale. What can I make with ground turkey? And I'm making shepherd's pie. So, okay. So meal planning apps. So we've talked about this a little bit before, but these are two really popular ones. I have more experience with the one on the left, Mealime. So how it works is Mealime, there's a ton of recipes on there, and there's a free version and there's a paid version. I would say the free version is just as good as the paid version. But again, you get you get more recipes if you do the paid version. But how it works is I believe each month they release new recipes, but then you can create your own meal plan. And if you add a recipe to your meal plan, it'll go directly into Instacart. Which if you don't use Instacart, I know that's not super helpful, but it will create a grocery list for you. So that's a cool part. So it'll, generate that automatically for you. But more than anything, I love it for the recipes. I think there's a lot of good animal protein recipes as well as plant-based proteins recipes. So that's something that I do all the time when I'm planning for my week. If I look in there and I have chickpeas, I'll type into the app chickpeas, and then it'll generate a ton of recipes with chickpeas that I could potentially use. Same thing for canned beans, or that's actually what I did today with the ground turkey. I typed it into Mealime, ground turkey, and that's how I found the ground turkey shepherd's pie. So that's something, if you look at what you have and type it in, even if it's like green beans, that's on the picture there, then it'll generate this recipe that you're like, oh, I have chicken in the freezer. This is perfect. I have I have breadcrumbs in my pantry. Perfect. So it helps you with some inspiration rather than having to think of like a completely new recipe. Yummly is the one on the right. This one I have less experience with, but it's similar idea. And you know, I think it also makes the grocery list for you, but more recipes and things like that. So both really good apps. I've really enjoyed the Meal Lime. And most, I'm like trying to think if I've had any recipes that I didn't like, but honestly, I can't think of any. Most of them turn out really good too and tasty. So I think they do a good job of making the plant-based protein recipes really good. So there's a few that I make with like polenta, which again, like polenta is not something I never grew up with. So like I never even, considered that until I use an app and started to try new things. And turns out it's very easy. Okay, so we're gonna move more into grocery shopping now. But any questions, thoughts, feelings, challenges with meal planning that you guys want to talk about? What do you guys think? Anyone? Okay. Well, like I said, you can start thinking of some scenarios maybe that you run into and we can talk about them at the end. But while we're here, actually, we can talk about the family meals for a second. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. I actually have a whole class on like developing a feeding strategy as parents and being confident in your feeding strategy as parents. So family meals are hard. Cooking for yourself is hard, but then feeding multiple mouths is really hard too, when everyone has an opinion on what they like and what they don't like. So my first thing is we talk a little bit about the division of responsibility when it comes to feeding. And what that means is the parents, so the caregivers, are in charge of what is served, when it's served, and where it's served, and the kids are in charge of if they eat it and how much. So ultimately, you are in charge of what is served. And I recommend against making multiple meals. So the kid, I can't, I'm looking at your dog being so funny. So I recommend against cooking multiple meals. You are not a restaurant, right? And so cooking one meal, but if you have a kiddo that's a little bit more selective or a little pickier, maybe you serve 1 to 2 things that they will eat, that they'll eat and they'll be able to fill up on, but 1 to 2 things that maybe they won't touch. But the point of this is, one, really like diversifying their diet, right? Like they don't have to eat those other 2 foods if they don't want to. They don't have to eat, they can only eat one of the foods if they want to. That's their choice. But introducing them to multiple foods is really important. And letting them kind of like familiarize themselves with different things. But the other thing is just, getting them involved in the process, getting them involved in the cooking. So that's kind of, I don't want to take up too much time on that, but that's kind of like the general consensus of try not to cook multiple meals, because that is so much harder, for planning processes and cooking and cleaning and all the things. But just make sure you like serve 1 to 2 things, or that they will eat, and 1 to 2 things that maybe they won't, if that makes sense. Swanson Foods. Oh my gosh. I used to get Swanson Foods. I remember the truck. They would drive around and we would get the ice cream with the rainbow pieces in it. I think this is the right thing that I'm thinking of. We got egg rolls from there. Anyway, is that what y'all are talking about? Maybe whoever asked that is like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I think that's it. Anyway, yes, Swanson, my thoughts on Swanson. Yes. Okay. My thoughts on Swanson is, again, if it helps you plan your meals, it's a great resource. Use it as a resource, right? Like I haven't looked into Swanson in forever. This is like a huge throwback to me. To be honest, I didn't even know it was still a thing. We used to always get it. Would drive up to our house, like go through our neighborhood. But I'll look into Swanson a little bit and see what kind of Oh, wait, Schwann's. That's it, right? Yes, Schwann's. Am I saying it wrong? Okay, Schwann's. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I knew what you were talking about. Yeah. So again, like if you, because kind of, I think of it similar to how I treat Trader Joe's a little bit. Like I'll get some fun things from Trader Joe's that I can kind of add into a meal. I kind of think of that as Schwann's a little bit, right? Like if you got like, say you get egg rolls from them, you can make egg rolls with a side salad or something, right? So you can kind of like put some easy, convenient, fun things in to still make a nutritious, balanced meal or meal plan. But I'll have to look into Schwann's and see kind of what their products are like. Now, I'm sure it's totally different than when I was growing up, but yeah, any of those things that help make things more convenient are not a bad thing. Now, would I say Schwann's every day? No, right? Because again, that goes back to that variety, right? How can we use these things to make balanced meals, or kind of like it's kind of a helper. It's not the total, the total thing, if that makes sense or answers your question. But I'll look into Schwann's a little bit and maybe see if I can find some good things on there that I can send you guys. Good question. That brought me back down memory lane. Okay, grocery store tour. So I'm going to go through a little bit things to look for in each category, just briefly, and we'll talk about each one. So like I mentioned, we do want to try to have all of these things present. So for produce, for the most part, we want to pick fruits and veggies that are in season. The benefits of this, usually they taste a little bit better, and oftentimes they're a little bit cheaper. Does that mean you can't buy things that are not in season? No, not at all, right? I mean, our farming technology is great now, and a lot of times you can buy things that are not in season, but oftentimes, again, they are cheaper and they will taste a little bit better. And then make sure you have buy some frozen, buy some canned things. Like I said, I always have canned tomatoes. I always have canned beans. And then I think someone mentioned in a previous class that you just prefer canned green beans to fresh green beans, and that's okay, right? And it's an easy way to get those veggies in. And same thing with frozen. So make sure you have some of those things on hand, depending on what you're making or what your week looks like. Dairy. So I think the most common question I get is the fat content. We probably touched on this just a little bit throughout the sessions. Fat content really depends on you and how, what you're eating. What is your normal intake? This is the benefit of having an individual dietitian, because they can kind of really dive in and explore what you're doing and where we need to adjust certain things. So this is what I'll say in terms of fat content with dairy. For the most part, we want most of our fats to be either plant-based fats or the fatty fish. But there is room, of course, for the saturated fats. We get that from meat. Sometimes we use butter, but that's more of a sometimes food. Now, dairy, say you have one of your breakfasts is just yogurt and fruit. For that breakfast, it's okay to have a 2% or whole fat yogurt, because you're not getting a whole lot of fat anywhere else in that meal, right? And that fat will help you absorb some of the nutrients and help you feel more satisfied from that meal. But if you're, making a yogurt bowl with peanut butter and chia seeds or something, adding a lot of goods in there, then you don't necessarily need the fat from the yogurt. Does that make sense? So it kind of depends on what you're doing, and what how much fat you're getting in the rest of your diet. Then I have people that hate skim milk, right? They're like, heck no, that tastes like water. Well, that's okay. Again, 2% you're still getting a lot of good nutrition there. So that's kind of what I'll say about dairy, just in a general way. Protein, the best thing here is just making sure you have a variety of animal and plant proteins. Now, with fat content here, I will say, we talk about always foods and sometimes foods. For the most part, we do want to include lean meats, right? Now, that doesn't mean there's not room every once in a while for that higher fat meat, but for the most part, on an always basis, we want those lean meats. So, chicken, if we're buying ground beef or ground turkey, trying to do at least 90-10. 90% to 10%. Things like when you're making a loin, tenderloin with like a fillet or pork, that's usually a little bit more lean. And then of course, fish is a lean protein. So we want to include mostly those, but then we can include some of the higher fat ones too, like bacon or beef, whatever. Okay. Seafood. So I think the general recommendation is 1 to 2 times a week. However, I think it's good to, once every 2 weeks even is a positive, right? Because fish is expensive these days. So it kind of just depends on, what, and it's expensive for me and I'm only cooking for 2. So for a family, I can't even imagine, right? So it kind of just depends what you can do, but it is a good idea to include fish, once a week or once every other week at least, because you get a lot of good healthy fats, omega-3s from that. So it's a good protein to include. With breads and grains, we want to aim for at least half of them to be whole. Okay, so what this means is for the most part, we always want to have those whole grains, but it doesn't always, for the most part, we want to include whole grains when we can, but they don't always have to be whole grains. So if you cannot stand whole grain pasta, then just eat the regular pasta, because oftentimes when you're having pasta, you're including a protein there, right? So, but then maybe be more intentional about the whole grain bread and the brown rice. So where you can, try to get the whole grain just because you get more fiber there, but there is room for the white grains too. And then fats and oils. So like I said earlier, focusing on the plant-based fats and from fish, like avocado, nuts, seeds, oils, because we do want fats in our meals, right? For several reasons. It does help you absorb the nutrients in the food, but that is also what directly links to satisfaction of the meal, right? So if you add like some fat on your vegetables, immediately it's more satisfying, right? Whether you're cooking it or whether you're eating it raw, right? Like if you have a dip or even just like obviously the salad, if you don't have dressing, that is much less satisfying. So always have some sort of fat present in the meal to help with those things. Any questions here or thoughts? Okay. So we've talked about this briefly already, and I think I've uploaded it for you guys. I'm going to double check, but this is just kind of an overall how to create a grocery list in your phone using the notes tab, like how to kind of separate it. This I've noticed helps me save time at the grocery store, because I'm not pacing back and forth between the produce and the dairy because I keep forgetting. It helps me organize, and then I'm out of the grocery store a lot sooner. And then also keeping a meal idea or like table plan for the week helps too. What I have is like I said, I prefer to write the list, but I ordered on Amazon. I'll see if I can find the link and send it to you guys, but I ordered a pad where one side is the grocery list and one side is the meal plan. And that's been helpful because another helpful thing for family planning is to have a menu available somewhere, because then your kiddo sees, oh, I don't really like Monday's meal, but I like Thursdays. So that's cool. At least my world isn't crashing down, right? So it kind of helps to include them there. So, but yeah, this again saves time. You do have to invest some time in the beginning of the week, but it does help the rest of the week, I promise, right? I mean, you invest some time to save time later, basically, and to feel less stress around food the rest of the week. Okay, so we'll kind of go through this just a little bit, but this is actually so in your Freedom Wellness packet that I uploaded for each of you guys, at the back of it, there is 2 weeks of meal ideas, and this is the second week. That's why it says day 8 through 14 on the top. But this is just meant for inspiration. So I don't usually plan this much for my weeks. Usually I'll plan the dinners and, like I mentioned earlier, have a rotation for the breakfast and the lunch. But it depends. Some people, some of my patients will plan this much and it helps them, right? So it kind of helps you use what you have and use multiple things for multiple meals. So it just depends what works for you. But you can see what I want to go through in these meals is you can see how they're really using the power plate to create these meals. So some of the breakfasts mentioned here are the breakfast bowl. You know, there's hash browns, eggs, cheese, and veggies, a breakfast wrap. That's one of my favorites. Oatmeal. The Greek yogurt with berries and nuts. Let's go here. For lunches, they did a bento box lunch one day, a taco salad using leftovers from dinner. That's a good example of using what you made the night before for something different, right? So if you did tacos the night before, then you can maybe make a salad with some of the greens that you have on hand. Let's see, on the dinner, you can see they had a stir fry one night, tacos, slow cooker, but and this is like planning for every night. Sometimes I don't even do this, right? Like I'll have 3 dinners planned, and then one dinner is a leftover night. Maybe one night is like grilled cheese and tomato soup, right? So you still have those at least 3 food groups, but it's not like, it's a little bit quicker maybe. And then rotisserie chicken. I mean, who isn't a fan of buying the rotisserie chicken? It, 1, tastes amazing. And 2, that's a perfect way that you can use that meat for so many different things, right? Like you can use it for salad, tacos, sandwiches. I've made chicken noodle soup with it, right? There's so many things that you can do with the one. And I think someone said, I don't go to Market Street a lot, but I think Market Street and maybe other places will do it too, but we'll actually take the meat off for you, which is nice. So it's like the worst part and they'll do it. This is what I mentioned earlier. So both these handouts I will upload for you. My favorite is on the left. It's a 10 no recipe entree handout using staples that you typically have on hand. So staples in your pantry, in your refrigerator, in your freezer, and there are 10 things that you can quickly and easily throw together using those things. Some of my favorites that I do all the time: pasta, stir fry, like I mentioned earlier, the bean and cheese tacos, veggie scramble with eggs. I'll give you one of the examples I did last week. We didn't really have a dinner plan, but I had a sweet potato left over. And I had one that I haven't cooked yet. And then I had a can of black beans, and there's a recipe I like to do with sweet potato, can of black beans, and eggs. And I made that for dinner. So using some of the things, you can still come up with meals. So I'm going to upload that one for you. And then this one on the right kind of just ties in together some of the grocery shopping tips in a nice way. So planning the meals, checking to see what you have, make a list. It does say don't shop hungry, because you will likely buy and spend. I think that's the biggest thing, is you'll spend a lot more. And then you've probably heard like only shop the outside of the grocery store. However, there's a lot of good things on the inside, or in the meat of the store. I don't know what you call that. But so the outside typically will have your like fresh items, right? Your dairy and stuff and your meats. But there's a lot of good products on the inside. Like there's a lot of good frozen things that are really awesome. And same thing with like those canned items, right? So don't think that you have to avoid that area, because there's a lot of things that will help you be successful. Okay. So this is something fun. So we talked about themed meal planning earlier. And again, I feel like it helps with planning, right? It helps with like keeping a routine even, and it helps keep the family involved. So it goes through the steps, and I'm going to upload this as a packet. Actually, there's 4 handouts we'll go through with planning. But think of 5 to 7 weekly themes, right? So this again can be involved with your family. Meatless Monday is a popular one, Taco Tuesday. I think we'll go through a couple of other examples, but pick some themes, then maybe fill those in with different recipes, or including your family again, and then building a grocery list off of that. So here are some examples on the right. So Monday, meatless Monday, bowl night, kids cook night. And then maybe you can fill out another idea. Tuesday, there was Taco Tuesday, Taste from Around the World. That one's fun. Wednesday is walk night, maybe doing breakfast for dinner. Thursday, sheet pan dinner, crock pot. So maybe some of the family favorites. Weekend, pasta and salad. I think another one is pizza. Oh, they have that on Friday. Yeah. So pizza night, freezer Friday. You can get as creative as you want to with different themes for maybe it's a color. I don't know. That one might be kind of hard, but yeah. So themes there. And then here are, it's an example 4-week menu. So, let's see here. So yeah, they give you the theme and then they give you the meals for each day. So they did bowl night, Tuesday night, walk night, sheet pan, and pizza. Pizza's another fun one too. Obviously when you have more time, but to build your own, build your own pizza night, right? And that can even be, that doesn't even have to mean you have to like make the crust either. You can buy like the blank crust or even just a cheese pizza and have them include the veggies on top. That's another way you can do that. Yeah, breakfast for dinner it's always been a huge hit because one, it's so tasty. And a lot of times it is like, depending on what you're making, but it can be quicker and it can be, still super balanced. You can have a bunch of different things. Yeah, I love breakfast for dinner. And then this is going to be there too. So where you can kind of create your own for your family and just fill in the blanks. So I will include that there. Okay. So, wow, this one went a little longer than I thought, but we'll go over this anyway. So it says you have squash, frozen meatballs, rice, sweet potatoes, pasta sauce, and frozen peas and carrots. So this, I kind of want you guys to look at this and you can either blurt it out or put it in the chat. What do you see here that you could potentially make for the week? What do you think? Oh, someone else said theme nights, so Italian on Monday, Mexican on Tuesday, Asian on Wednesday. That's another really good one. Yeah, I love doing the different cultures. That's kind of how I think through. This is obviously different, but think through what if I'm going to order food, if I'm going to do it, that's sometimes how I categorize it too. So what do you see if you have these specific foods? What are some ideas that maybe you have that you can make? What do you think? And it doesn't have to be just using these things, right? Like it could be, oh, I want to make something with sweet potatoes. I have to buy 2 more things, but spaghetti. Yeah. Yeah. Good one. Spaghetti. Curry. Yeah. Meatballs with pasta and pasta sauce with carrots. Beautiful. Yeah. So you can see like just off of these random things thrown together, you can still, pan dinner with veggies. Great. You can still make things. So a lot of the things you guys said, I said. So pasta and meatballs, some sort of protein that maybe you can buy with rice and squash, sweet potatoes with a vegetable and protein, and then maybe doing a chicken fried rice using the frozen peas and carrots. Or even like sometimes I'll just do a scrambled egg fried rice too, right? There's a lot of things, easy things you could do. Good. Okay, so this I do want to give a few minutes just of time again to go through this session today. Any questions or specific situations that you want to talk about? And I will stay on if you guys, whoever needs to leave can leave, but I'll stay on if you have a question or thing that you want to talk about, or just through the entire series. Is there anything that you feel like you kind of want to touch base on? Okay, someone said none. Well, if there's nothing that you guys want to have any questions or any scenarios that you want to run through, let's end on at least one positive from you guys about like something that you feel really proud of that you've been working on or that you've been trying to do differently before we say goodbye for the last time. Maybe not.
So I just have a quick question. So
yeah.
How long are we going to have those documents available to us?
Good question. So The recordings you won't have forever. I can say that. I need to ask Jen specifically how long we want to leave those up for you guys. The handouts, I need to ask that specifically. I'm not sure if we're keeping the access to that for you guys. Obviously, you can download them and keep them. But the recordings you won't have access to forever. So
Okay.
that's something I'm gonna ask your wellness coordinator to see what we want to do for there. But either way, it's going to be a little bit because the in-person class still has another, let's see, probably 4 weeks of class,
Okay.
because they were doing every other week. So it'll at least be that much time, but I'll let you guys know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question. Yeah. Okay.
Well, for me, one good thing, I have
Yeah.
been more like aware about what I have been eating and like trying to make better choices.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
Awareness.
that always been successful, but I'm trying to be more aware and making better choices.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, again, it's not always going to be perfect or ideal. I think honestly, we learn the most in those moments that aren't always ideal, right? What went wrong here? What happened? How can I do something better that supports me better next time? Right. So again, it's that awareness without judgment. So really good. Someone else said the power plate. You're probably dreaming about the power plate every night. But yeah, again, it's a guideline. We want things to be guidelines for you, not rules. We want you to be set up for success in a way that you feel confident rather than punished by food or by dieting or anything like that, right? But awesome. I have enjoyed these last 6 weeks with you guys. And again, you're going to have a healthy account. So if you want to message me or have any questions moving forward, please, please, please do that. I love having those conversations with people over the chat. I've already had a few of you reach out. We've had some good connections. So I love doing that. And then I am going to send, some of you probably remember the survey that I sent out before the class. I am going to send out another survey after the class. So it would really help me if you guys filled that out. And then I will keep you posted on how long you'll have access to have everything. And then I am putting together just a general resource sheet for things that we have talked about in each class, in person and virtual, actually. So you'll get some of the resources that they have talked about over there as well. So, but other than that, thank you so much. I have enjoyed getting to know you guys and having great discussion with you guys. And hopefully I will see you around Frisco ISD.
Well, thank you so much. Has been a great class. Thank you.
Thank you guys. I have enjoyed you guys. Have a good one. Have a good week. Bye.